Christmas was supposed to be a time of joy, family, and togetherness. At least, that's what I used to believe. This year, though, things felt different. Maybe it was the weight of past disappointments pressing on my chest, or maybe I just knew, deep down, that something was off. It started with a phone call from my mother. "David, honey, we'd love for you to come to Christmas dinner this year," she said, her voice warm, almost too warm. "But it's going to be a quiet, adults-only gathering." I hesitated. "So, Lily isn't invited?" A beat of silence. Then, "It's just that we want a peaceful evening this time. You understand, right?" I didn't. Not really. But I also didn't want to fight. Lily, my 7-year-old daughter, was my world. She was sweet, well-mannered, and by all reasonable standards a great kid. Sure, she could be a little energetic, but that's what kids do. The idea that she was somehow too much for Christmas dinner, that stung. But I swallowed my pride and nodded along. "All right, I'll come by for a bit." That was my first mistake. Christmas Eve arrived, and I pulled up to my parents' house. A place that had once felt like home, but now felt more like neutral territory. The warm glow of lights spilled from the windows, and the faint sound of holiday music drifted through the air. For a brief second, I let myself believe that maybe, just maybe, this would be a normal, drama-free night. I stepped inside, greeted by the familiar smell of roasted turkey and cinnamon. My mother turned from the stove, flashing me a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "David, I'm so glad you made it." Before I could respond, a high-pitched voice squealed. "Uncle David?" I turned toward the sound and froze. Michael's kids, Jack and Emma, darted through the living room, their laughter echoing off the walls. Jack nearly knocked over a chair as he chased Emma, who was shrieking with delight. Wrapping paper and half-opened presents were strewn across the floor, evidence of the chaos they had already created. I felt my jaw tighten. "No kids, huh?" I glanced at my mother, waiting for an explanation, but she had already turned back to stirring the gravy, pretending nothing was wrong. "Mom," I said slowly, "I thought you said this was an adults-only dinner." She sighed, like I was the one being difficult. "Oh, David, you know how it is." Michael and his wife needed a break, and besides, Jack and Emma are so well behaved. It's different. Different. The word sat heavy in my chest. Different how? Because Michael was the favorite? Because my daughter wasn't the right kind of kid? Michael, who had been watching from across the room, smirked as he clinked his wine glass against my father's. He didn't even bother to acknowledge me, too busy basking in his usual golden child glow. I exhaled sharply, hands clenching at my sides. So that's how it is. They didn't just exclude Lily, they lied to me about it. I had been naive to think this year would be any different. And suddenly, I wasn't hungry anymore. A slow, burning anger spread through my chest. I stood there, absorbing the hypocrisy, the casual way my family had once again made it clear where I stood. Or rather, where I didn't. For a moment, I debated letting it go. Smile, nod, get through dinner. That's what I had done for years. That's what they expected me to do. But as I watched Jack nearly trip over a rug while Emma shrieked with laughter, something inside me snapped. I turned to my mother. "So, let me get this straight. Lily isn't allowed here because it was supposed to be adults only, but Michael's kids get a free pass? How exactly does that work?" Her eyes flickered, guilt flashing across her face for a split second before she recovered. "David, sweetheart, it's not like that." "No?" I let out a dry laugh. "Then explain it to me." Michael, who had been lounging comfortably on the couch, finally decided to speak. "Oh, come on, David. Don't start." His voice was laced with amusement, like he found this whole thing entertaining. I turned to him, my patience wearing thin. "Start what, exactly? Asking why my daughter isn't good enough to be here? Why your kids, who are literally running around screaming, get a free pass while mine wasn't even given the option?" Michael took a long sip of his wine before setting the glass down with a smirk. "Look, man, it's not a big deal. Lily's high energy. Mom and Dad just wanted a peaceful evening. My kids know how to behave." A sharp, bitter laugh escaped me. "Are you kidding me? Your son just sent a chair flying across the room." My father, who had been silent up until now, finally spoke. "David," he said, his voice calm in that patronizing way that made me feel like I was still 10 years old. "This isn't about favoritism. We just knew you'd understand." Understand? The word felt like a slap in the face. Understand that I would always be second? That Michael's family would always come first? That no matter what I did, no matter how much I tried, I was always going to be the afterthought? My mother sighed, walking over as if to placate me. "David, please. We don't want an argument. moment. It's Christmas. The first stepped back, shaking my head. Yeah, it is. And you made it very clear who actually matters in this family. Michael snorted. Oh, stop being so dramatic. You're acting like a child. I turned to him, my jaw clenched so tightly it hurt. I'm acting like a child? You sat there and watched our parents exclude my daughter, and you're fine with that? You think that's normal? His smirk didn't waver. I think you're blowing this way out of proportion. You could have just left her with a sitter. I did leave her with a sitter, I snapped, because I was under the impression that this was an adults-only dinner, which was clearly a lie. Silence settled over the room. My mother shifted uncomfortably. My father looked annoyed, and Michael just looked smug. Because he had already won. That's what this was about, wasn't it? It wasn't just that they preferred Michael. It was that they expected me to take it, to roll over, swallow my pride, and pretend like it didn't matter. But this time, it did. I exhaled slowly, my hands shaking with restrained fury. You know what? I'm done. I should have been done a long time ago. My mother's eyes widened. David, don't. I didn't let her finish. I turned, grabbed my coat, and walked straight toward the door. I didn't care that it was freezing outside. I didn't care that dinner hadn't even been served yet. I didn't care. I wasn't going to sit at a table where my daughter wasn't welcome. I heard footsteps behind me, then my father's voice. David, don't be ridiculous. You're overreacting. I stopped at the doorway, gripping the handle so hard my knuckles turned white. I'm not overreacting, I said, turning slightly to look at him. I'm just finally seeing things for what they are. And with that, I stepped outside, letting the cold air bite at my skin as I pulled the door shut behind me. I didn't look back. The drive home was quiet. No music, no podcasts, just the hum of the tires on the road and the occasional sound of my own steady breathing as I tried to process what had just happened. I should have felt relieved. I had finally said what I'd been holding back for years. I had stood up for myself, for Lily, but all I felt was exhaustion. By the time I pulled into my driveway, the weight of the night settled fully onto my shoulders. I sat there for a moment, gripping the steering wheel, staring at the dashboard as if it had the answers to the questions racing through my mind. Did I do the right thing? Was I being too harsh? Would they even care that I left? A sharp gust of wind rattled the car, snapping me out of my thoughts. With a deep breath, I stepped out and walked into my house. The warmth inside was a stark contrast to the cold, sterile atmosphere of my parents' home. This place small, a little cluttered, filled with drawings Lily had made, felt real. It felt like home. And then, as if she had sensed my return, Lily's tiny footsteps padded down the hall before she appeared, rubbing the sleep from her eyes. "Daddy?" she mumbled, her voice heavy with sleep. "You're back already?" I crouched down, pulling her into a hug. "Yeah, sweetheart, I'm back." She yawned against my shoulder. "Did you have fun?" I hesitated. The easy answer was yes. The truth was far from it. I kissed the top of her head. "I missed you," I said instead. She smiled sleepily. "I missed you too." I tucked her back into bed, brushing a stray curl from her forehead as she drifted off again. And in that moment, I knew whatever happened next, she was the only family that truly mattered. The first message. The next morning, I woke up to the first of many messages. It was from my dad. "Dad, David, your mother and I are very upset about what happened last night. We missed you at dinner. Can we talk?" I stared at the screen. Not an apology, not an acknowledgement of what they had done. Just a carefully worded message to make me feel guilty. I let out a dry laugh and tossed the phone onto the couch. Not even an hour later, another message came in. This time, from Michael. "Michael, man, you were way out of line last night. You made Mom cry. Hope you're happy." Oh, now Mom was crying? Funny, because she hadn't seemed too emotional when she was telling me that my daughter wasn't good enough for their precious Christmas dinner. I shook my head. They weren't reaching out because they wanted to make things right. They were reaching out because they wanted to sweep everything under the rug like they always did. I wasn't playing that game anymore. And then, just when I thought they couldn't sink any lower, the next message came. This one was from Michael's wife, Anna. "Anna, hey David, I know things were tense last night, but Michael and I were wondering if you could help us out. We're in a bit of a financial bind, and we could really use a loan to cover some things for the kids. Just until next month. I blinked at the screen, my mind struggling to catch up. They had excluded my child, lied to me, let Michael's kids take the place of mine, and now, barely 12 hours later, they wanted money. I could almost hear Michael laughing behind the text, sitting comfortably in my parents' house, knowing that no matter what he did, they would always take his side. That's when the anger returned. I wasn't just some disposable family member they could push aside until they needed something from me. I wasn't their backup plan. I wasn't their safety net. I picked up my phone, my fingers steady as I typed out my response. Me, Anna, I find it interesting that after last night, the first thing you guys think to do is ask me for money. I don't know how to make this any clearer. I'm done. I've spent years being treated like an outsider in my own family, and I'm not going to keep pretending it's okay. You made it very clear that Lily and I don't matter to you, so don't come to me when it's convenient. I hit send. Seconds later, my phone buzzed. Anna, David, don't be like this. We're family. I didn't respond. The guilt trip begins by lunchtime. My parents had apparently decided to step in. First, my dad called. I let it go to voicemail. Then my mom tried. I ignored that too. Finally, she sent a message. Mom, David, we don't understand why you're doing this. We love you. We love Lily. We just wanted a quiet Christmas. You're making this bigger than it needs to be. I clenched my jaw. A quiet Christmas. Except it wasn't quiet. Jack and Emma had been running around, tearing through the house, laughing and shouting like normal kids. The only difference was that they were Michael's kids. I took a slow breath, then typed. Me. If you loved Lily, you wouldn't have treated her like she didn't belong. You lied to me. You told me it was adults only, but it wasn't. You didn't even try to include her. And now, instead of apologizing, you're making excuses. I'm not interested in excuses anymore. It took 5 minutes for my mom to reply. Mom, David, please. Let's not make this a permanent thing. You know how Michael is. We just want the family to stay together. I shook my head. There it was, the unspoken truth. Michael would never change because he didn't have to. My parents had spent years enabling him, smoothing things over, expecting me to be the bigger person. But I was done carrying that burden. I didn't reply. Instead, I turned off my phone, leaned back on the couch, and closed my eyes. For the first time in a long time, I felt something close to peace. For the first time in years, my phone stayed silent. No calls, no guilt-tripping texts, no passive-aggressive messages disguised as concern. Just silence. At first, I didn't know what to do with it. I'd spent so long caught in my family's cycle being ignored, being the afterthought, being expected to quietly accept it that cutting them off left a strange emptiness in its place. But it wasn't a bad emptiness. It was the kind of quiet that came after a storm had finally passed. And honestly, it felt good. The final attempt, a week passed before my mother finally showed up at my door. She didn't call first. She didn't text. She just arrived, like she had a right to demand my time whenever she felt like it. I opened the door, already bracing myself for whatever emotional manipulation she had planned. She looked tired. Her usual polished appearance, perfect hair, carefully chosen jewelry was slightly off. Her eyes were red-rimmed, like she had been crying. For a moment, guilt tried to creep in. Then I reminded myself she wasn't here to fix things. She was here to pull me back in. David, she started, voice soft. Can we talk? I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. Go ahead, she sighed. Why are you doing this? We're family. You're shutting us out over one misunderstanding. I laughed under my breath. A misunderstanding? Yes, she stepped closer. We never meant to hurt you or Lily. We just wanted a peaceful Christmas. I tilted my head, and yet Michael's kids were there, running around, laughing. Exactly what you told me you didn't want. She flinched slightly. That was different. Different how? I asked, voice calm but firm. She hesitated, and that told me everything I needed to know. You don't get it, she finally said. It's not about Michael being the favorite. I raised an eyebrow. Then what is it about? She exhaled sharply, looking away. Michael needs more help than you do. His job hasn't been stable. The kids are younger, and I cut her off. And what? That justifies treating me and Lily like we don't matter? Her eyes snapped back to me. That's not fair. I shook my head. No, what's not fair is you expecting me to accept it. Silence stretched between us. For a brief moment, I saw something flicker in her expression. Recognition, maybe even regret, but it didn't change anything. She reached out, like she wanted to take my hand, but I stepped back. I'm not doing this anymore, Mom. Her brows furrowed. Doing what? Being the one who always has to let things go, I said. Being the one who's expected to forgive, to move on. to act like it doesn't matter. It does matter, and I'm done pretending it doesn't. Her lips pressed together. You're really going to throw away your family over this? I met her gaze steady. No, you threw me away a long time ago. She inhaled sharply, blinking rapidly, but I didn't give her a chance to argue. I love you, Mom, I said, my voice softer now. But I love Lily more, and I won't let her grow up thinking this is normal, thinking she has to fight for scraps of affection from people who don't see her worth. I took a step back. If you ever decide you actually want to be her grandmother, if you ever decide to treat both of us like family, then call me. She stared at me, lips parted slightly, but she didn't say anything. And for the first time, I didn't need her to. I gave her a small nod and gently closed the door, finding peace. That night, I didn't check my phone. I didn't sit by, waiting for an apology that wasn't coming. I sat on the couch with Lily, watching a cartoon she loved, listening to her laugh, feeling her small weight against my side. And I realized something. I wasn't losing a family. I was choosing the one that actually mattered. And for the first time in my life, I felt free. Story 2. There's something gut-wrenching about realizing that your own family, the people who are supposed to have your back, would rather gaslight you than admit that one of them is a predator. If you had told me a year ago that my younger brother would try to destroy my life, I wouldn't have believed you. But here we are. My name's Alex. I'm 27, and until recently, I thought I had a relatively normal, if somewhat strained relationship with my family. My girlfriend, Emily, is 25, a pediatric nurse, and quite literally the best thing that's ever happened to me. She's kind, brilliant, and sees the best in people sometimes to a fault. And then there's my younger brother, Ryan. Ryan is 24, and he's been the golden child of our family since the day he was born. Our parents, especially my mom, doted on him endlessly, excusing every bad behavior, every cruel comment, every manipulative stunt, as boys being boys. Meanwhile, I was held to a completely different standard. If Ryan failed at something, it was my fault for not helping him. If Ryan wanted something of mine, I was selfish for not handing it over. And if Ryan did something wrong, well, there was always some reason why it wasn't actually his fault. Growing up, I learned to keep my distance. It was easier that way, but that all changed when I brought Emily into the picture, the wedding that started it all. It was supposed to be a simple family dinner, nothing too extravagant, just a way for Emily to finally meet my parents and brother after 8 months of dating. I'd been hesitant about introducing her, given my family's history of making my life miserable. But she convinced me. Maybe things will be different now that we're adults, she'd said. I should have trusted my instincts. The moment Emily walked into the dining room, Ryan's entire demeanor changed. He practically shoved my mom out of the way just to be the first to hug her, holding on way too long until she had to physically step back. Throughout dinner, he kept finding excuses to touch her arm or shoulder, laughing at non-existent inside jokes like they were old friends instead of strangers who had just met. He even went so far as to try to feed her from his fork while making intense eye contact, something so wildly inappropriate that even Emily, who was trying to be polite, was visibly uncomfortable. It wasn't just the inappropriate touching. Ryan also spent the entire evening tearing me down, twisting childhood memories into embarrassing stories designed to make me look weak, pathetic, and incompetent. He told everyone about how he had to save my high school girlfriend from my supposed emotional abuse, something that never happened. He painted me as unstable, unreliable, and unworthy. My parents, of course, sat there nodding along, like everything Ryan said was gospel. I gritted my teeth and endured it for Emily's sake. But then, things escalated. After dinner, Emily offered to help clean up, and I stepped into the garage with my dad to move some old boxes. When I came back inside, I noticed Emily was missing. A cold feeling settled in my stomach. I found her in the kitchen, cornered by Ryan. He had positioned himself between her and the doorway, his hand braced against the counter beside her hip. His voice was low, but I could hear every word. "You deserve someone more exciting than my boring, unstable older brother," he murmured. "You know that, don't you?" Emily was stiff, tense, and clearly uncomfortable. "Ryan, back off." "Oh, come on." He leaned in closer. "You don't have to play hard to get with me." That's when I stepped in. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" Emily immediately moved to my side, her relief palpable. Ryan just smirked, like this was all some hilarious joke at my expense. "Relax, man. We were just talking." Emily was trembling. I knew she didn't want to cause a scene, so we left shortly after. On the drive home, she admitted she'd felt uncomfortable the entire evening, but had tried to be polite because it was our first family gathering. I felt sick, but I still had no idea how bad things were about to get. The stalking begins a few days after the dinner. Emily started getting strange phone calls. At first, it was just heavy breathing or immediate hang-ups. Then came the voicemails creepy, anonymous messages calling her stuck up and frigid for rejecting a better option. She didn't make the connection at first, but I did. Some of the voices in the background of those messages sounded familiar. Ryan's old high school friends, the same guys who had always followed him around, enabling his behavior, laughing at his cruelty, and doing his dirty work when he wanted to keep his hands clean. Emily blocked the numbers, but then they just started calling from new ones. It got worse. Ryan's friends began showing up at the hospital where Emily worked, pretending to be visitors. They didn't do anything outright illegal, just hung around the pediatric ward, watching her, staring, whispering just loud enough for her to hear. Last week, one of them followed her to her car after a late shift. She was so scared that she locked herself inside and called me, crying. She was too afraid to drive home in case they were still watching her. I had to pick her up and drive her home while a friend followed behind us to make sure we weren't being tailed. Emily started having panic attacks before her shifts. Her coworkers noticed. Her supervisor pulled her aside, asking if something was wrong. That was when I snapped. Confronting Ryan, I gathered all the evidence, voicemails, texts, security footage from the hospital, and went straight to my parents' house, where Ryan still lived. I laid everything out in front of him. He barely glanced at it before smirking. "No idea what you're talking about," he said lazily. "But maybe, if Emily wasn't such a stuck-up BTCH, people wouldn't feel the need to teach her a lesson." I punched him. I don't even remember deciding to do it. One second, I was staring at his smug, unrepentant face, and the next, my fist connected with his jaw. He stumbled back, clutching his face like I'd just broken his nose. And then, of course, my parents came running. They didn't ask what happened. They didn't look at the evidence. They didn't care that Emily was being harassed and stalked. All they saw was their perfect, precious Ryan bleeding. My mom started sobbing hysterically, screaming about how I was out of control. My dad told me I'd always been jealous of Ryan and needed professional help for my anger issues. When I tried to explain, my mom had the audacity to say, maybe Emily led Ryan on and is now playing the victim. That was the moment I realized something. My parents would never, ever see Ryan for who he really was. They told me to leave and not come back until I apologized. I haven't spoken to them since. Right now, I'm sitting in Emily's apartment, where I've been staying for the past few days. She's finally asleep after crying for hours. She's terrified of going to work tomorrow. I don't know what to do. Every time I think Ryan can't sink any lower, he proves me wrong. After that night at my parents' house, I knew I couldn't count on them for anything. They had made their choice. Ryan could do no wrong, and I was the problem. Fine. I didn't need them. What I did need was to protect Emily. I thought maybe, just maybe, Ryan would back off now that he knew I wasn't playing around. That maybe he'd realize he had gone too far. But if anything, it only made him more determined. And this time, he wasn't just playing mind games. The cops were useless. The first spent the next few days compiling everything, screenshots of the texts and voicemails, video footage of Ryan's friends lurking at the hospital, written statements from 3 of Emily's coworkers who had witnessed the stalking. We took it all to the police, hoping they'd finally do something. At first, the officer we spoke to seemed concerned, especially about the workplace harassment. But then we mentioned one of Ryan's friends, Tyler. Turns out, Tyler's dad was a sergeant in the department. Everything changed in an instant. The officer's whole demeanor shifted. His polite concern was replaced by a bored, almost dismissive tone. He started downplaying everything, suggesting Emily was misinterpreting harmless attention. He even had the nerve to ask if she had somehow encouraged it. Emily was holding my hand so tightly that her nails dug into my skin. She was shaking. I asked if we could speak to a female officer instead. They gave us the runaround, passing us off to different people until eventually someone officially told us there wasn't enough concrete evidence linking Ryan directly to the harassment. They agreed to issue a warning to the men in the videos. But that was it. A warning. Emily and I walked out of that station feeling more helpless than ever. The setup. The day after we went to the police, Ryan showed up at my parents' house with a black eye. I hadn't seen him since the night I punched him, but somehow, now he had a fresh injury. And, of course, my parents immediately assumed I had attacked him again. My mom called me in tears, screaming about how I was out of control. My dad left a voicemail threatening to cut me off financially, which would have been scary if I actually depended on them for anything. He even threatened to fire me from the family real estate business. Never mind the fact that I never worked there. That was Ryan's gig. But then came the worst part. My mom kept calling and texting, begging me to come over. She swore Ryan was sorry and that they wanted to fix things as a family. She even convinced Emily, saying Ryan wanted to apologize to both of us. I should have known better. But Emily, ever the optimist, thought maybe, just maybe, this was a chance to put an end to it. So we went. The family intervention. The moment we walked into my parents' house, I knew something was wrong. The dining room was full of people. My parents, Ryan, our aunt and uncle, who always took Ryan's side, and worst of all, Tyler and two other guys who had been stalking Emily. I felt Emily go rigid beside me. "This isn't a dinner," I said coldly. My mom smiled in that fake, too sweet way she always did when she was about to say something awful. "No, sweetheart, this is a family intervention." For 2 hours, they took turns attacking Emily's character. My mom insisted that Emily had been flirting with Ryan at that first dinner and was now trying to cover her tracks by playing the victim. My aunt suggested that Emily was probably used to male attention and had misinterpreted friendly behavior as harassment. Ryan sat there, looking devastated, playing the part of the wronged little brother. "I was so excited to finally have a sister-in-law," he sighed dramatically. "I don't know why she's doing this." Then Tyler and his friends chimed in, swearing they had only been at the hospital visiting a sick relative. That's when they started questioning Emily's mental stability. "She works night shifts," my uncle said. "Maybe she's just exhausted and paranoid. Being around sick kids all the time has to be stressful," my mom added. "Maybe she's projecting." Emily was fighting back tears. I was seeing red. Then my mom actually had the audacity to say, "I found a therapist who can help Emily work through this tendency to create drama." Emily got up and left the room. I stood to follow, but my mom grabbed my arm. "You need to choose, Alex. Your real family or a girl who is trying to ruin us?" I chose Emily. We left without another word. The fallout that night, Emily had the worst panic attack I've ever seen. She could barely breathe, curled up on the couch, gripping my hand like it was the only thing keeping her grounded. I felt completely powerless. Ryan's friends got bolder after that night. They started spreading rumors at Emily's workplace, whispers about her being mentally unstable and having a history of making false accusations. Her supervisor called her in for a meeting, saying that while he believed her, the drama was affecting workplace morale. He gently suggested she consider transferring to another hospital. That was when we knew we had to leave. We hired a lawyer to start the process of filing restraining orders, but it was slow. Meanwhile, one of Emily's former colleagues had a job opening for her at a hospital 300 miles away. We took it. It wasn't fair. We weren't the ones who did anything wrong, but Ryan was never going to stop, and my parents would never, ever hold him accountable. I hated that we had to uproot our lives, but seeing Emily so terrified every day, that was worse. We packed our bags. We were getting out. But before we could leave, something happened that changed everything. And this time, Ryan finally went too far. We were supposed to leave in 2 weeks. That was the plan. We'd packed most of our things, finalized the lease on our new place, and Emily had given her notice at the hospital. But then my cousin Holly's wedding happened. Holly had always been one of the few family members who actually saw Ryan for what he was. When we were kids, she once caught him torturing her cat. She told everyone, but my parents smoothed it over, convincing the rest of the family that she was exaggerating. She never forgot. She was the only one who believed me when I told her what Ryan had been doing to Emily. She even wrote a statement for our lawyer about his history of manipulative and disturbing behavior. So when she invited us to her wedding, Emily and I were hesitant. But Holly called me personally, promising that Ryan was only invited because her parents insisted. She swore she had hired extra security just to keep an eye on him and had even seated us far away from my parents. She wanted us there. We decided to go. It was a mistake. The wedding that changed everything. The ceremony was fine. Ryan was busy playing groomsman, so he had no chance to corner Emily. We thought, for just a moment, that maybe we'd get through the night without incident. We were wrong. At the reception, Emily and I were seated with Holly's in-laws, far across the room from my parents and Ryan. She was finally starting to relax, actually laughing for the first time in weeks. And then, around 9 p.m., she excused herself to use the bathroom. She was gone for 10 minutes before I realized Ryan was missing too. A cold dread settled in my stomach. I got up to go check, but before I could reach the hallway leading to the bathrooms, I heard her scream. I ran. I rounded the corner just in time to see Holly's husband, Miller, and his brother dragging Ryan off of Emily. Ryan had her pinned against the wall, his hand over her mouth, the other gripping her wrist so hard that bruises were already forming. Her dress was torn at the shoulder. Her face was streaked with tears. Miller's brother, who happened to be a cop from another city, had Ryan pinned to the floor in seconds. Emily was shaking, clutching her torn dress, gasping for air. And Ryan was laughing. "Come on, sweetheart," he slurred, clearly drunk. "You've been teasing me all night." She hadn't even looked in his direction once. I don't remember lunging at him. I don't remember punching him. All I know is that it took Miller and his brother to pull me off before I did something I'd regret. The police were called. Ryan was still smirking when they arrived, right up until the moment they put him in handcuffs. And then, of course, my parents showed up. My parents' final betrayal. My mom was hysterical, screaming that it was all a misunderstanding, that Emily must have led Ryan on. My dad tried to physically block the officers from taking Ryan, insisting it was a family matter. Ryan, meanwhile, kept switching between playing the victim and spewing the most vile insults at Emily, calling her a whore, a liar, a manipulative bitch. The police weren't buying it, especially not when Holly's wedding video revealed Ryan following Emily into the hallway, clearly waiting for her to be alone. But my parents still defended him. Even after watching that video, even after seeing the bruises on Emily's arms, even after hearing the witnesses, multiple people confirm what happened, they still blamed her. They still blamed me. And when the officers finally shoved Ryan into the squad car, he wasn't laughing anymore. He was screaming at me, at Emily, at everyone. "You don't know what I'm capable of," he spat through the window as they drove away. It wasn't a threat. It was a promise. The aftermath after Ryan's arrest, my parents went nuclear. They called every relative, twisting the story into something unrecognizable. According to them, Emily had seduced Ryan, lured him into a secluded hallway, and screamed assault when he rejected her. They claimed Miller and his brother beat Ryan up. Before the cops arrived, they didn't, and that Emily faked the bruises, she didn't. They called me nonstop, demanding that Emily drop the charges. When I refused, my dad threatened to cut me out of the will. I told him I didn't want a cent of his dirty money. Then they started showing up at my apartment, pounding on the door, screaming about destroying the family. My neighbors called the cops on them. The next day, we bought plane tickets. We weren't waiting 2 more weeks. We were leaving now. Holly promised to keep us updated on the case. I didn't care about anything except getting Emily out of there, away from my parents, away from Ryan, away from everything. But even 300 miles away, I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over. Emily and I left the state the very next day. We packed what we could fit into our suitcases, locked up my apartment, and boarded a flight without telling anyone except Holly. The moment the plane took off, Emily let out a shaky breath and squeezed my hand. "It's really over, right?" I wanted to say yes. I wanted to believe that putting 300 miles between us and my family would make Ryan disappear from our lives forever. But deep down, I knew better. The trial and my parents' last stand, Holly kept her word. She updated us on everything happening back home. Ryan had been charged with assault. Between Emily's bruises, the wedding footage, and multiple witness testimonies, the case against him was solid. My parents, of course, went full denial mode. They hired the best lawyer they could afford. They pressured relatives to take Ryan's side. They even tried to bribe Emily into dropping the charges, sending a letter through their attorney offering a financial settlement if she just let this whole mess go. Emily tore it up without even reading the amount. Then my dad did something I'll never forgive. He reached out to Emily's hospital, tried to get her fired, told them she was a liar, unstable, that she had a history of making false accusations. But this wasn't my hometown. This wasn't a place where my family had influence. The hospital not only ignored him, but Emily's supervisor personally assured her that she had their full support. That was the moment I knew there was no saving my relationship with my parents. They had chosen Ryan over me, and now they were choosing him over the truth. The fall of Ryan and my father. The trial lasted 3 days. Ryan took the stand, played the victim, cried on cue. My parents sat behind him in court, clinging to each other, shaking their heads every time the prosecutor presented damning evidence. Then Emily testified. She was steady, clear, unshaken. She told the jury everything. How Ryan harassed her from the first moment they met, how he stalked her, how he tried to isolate her in that hallway. The jury deliberated for less than an hour. Ryan was convicted of aggravated assault. He was sentenced to 8 years in prison, eligible for parole in 5. I wish I could say my parents learned their lesson, but they didn't. They blamed the system. They blamed Emily. They blamed me. But karma wasn't done yet. Because while Ryan was rotting in a cell, my dad was about to have his own reckoning. Rachel, the woman who took Ryan down for good 3 months after Ryan went to prison, Holly called me, her voice tight with something between anger and satisfaction. Alex, you're not gonna believe this. Turns out, Ryan had gotten married last year to a woman named Rachel. No one in the family knew because Ryan kept it quiet, probably because he didn't want anyone to see what he was doing to her. Rachel had been enduring the same abuse Emily had barely escaped from, and my father, he helped cover it up. For months, Rachel tried to leave, and every time, my dad stepped in, threatening her job, manipulating her family, making sure she had nowhere to go. It wasn't until she stopped showing up for work for 3 days straight that a concerned coworker called the police. When officers did a welfare check, they found Rachel barely able to move, 2 broken ribs, a fractured wrist, bruises everywhere, and this time, my dad couldn't talk his way out of it. He was arrested for witness intimidation and conspiracy to obstruct justice. Rachel filed for divorce, and just like that, the empire my parents built to protect Ryan came crumbling down. The letter from my mother 6 months passed before I heard from my mom. It came in the form of a 12-page letter. In it, she apologized for everything. She admitted she'd always known Ryan had problems, but thought they were protecting him by covering it up. She admitted she had gaslighted me, that she had blamed Emily because it was easier than admitting the truth. She told me she had finally left my father and was going to therapy. She said she wanted to fix things. I sat there staring at the letter for a long time. Then I looked at Emily, my wife now, our daughter, Emma, sleeping peacefully in her crib, and I thought about what would have happened if I had stayed in that toxic family. Would my parents have forced me to bring Emma around Ryan? Would they have pressured me to give him another chance once he got out? I folded the letter, put it back in the envelope, and didn't respond. Moving forward, Ryan is still in prison. My dad lost his real estate license and is facing trial for what he did to Rachel. Rachel, thankfully, is healing. She moved in with her sister in another state, and we keep in touch. Emily says she reminds her a lot of herself, the same quiet strength, the same resilience. As for my mom, she's out of my life, at least for now, maybe forever. Because the truth is, it's too late. The damage is done, and I refuse to let my daughter grow up in a world where men like Ryan are protected by people like my parents. The cycle of abuse ends with me. For Emily, for Emma, for us, we built a life far away from the wreckage my family left behind. And for the first time in my life, I'm truly free.